Hello, and welcome to OEG Voices.
OEG Voices.
OEG Voices.
OEG Voices.
A podcast bringing to you the voices and ideas of open educators from around the world.
OEG Voices is produced by Open Education Global,
a member-based, non-profit organization
supporting the development and use of open education globally.
Learn more about us at OEGlobal.org.
There's so much to take in at a global level.
We hope to bring you closer to how open education is working
by hearing the stories of practitioners
told in their own voices.
Each episode introduces you to a global open educator,
and we invite you to later engage in conversation with them
in our OEG Connect community.
Welcome to another episode of OEG Voices, a podcast produced by Open Education Global, aimed at bringing to you people, personalities, and ideas of open educators from around the world and across the galaxy. I'm your host, Alan Levine, and I'm really pleased to be joined today by my colleagues, Marcela Morales and Stacey. How are you both doing today? What's in your world?
Hello. All good here. Very happy to be here and to speak with Robert, which I'm very excited to hear his trajectory in open.
Yeah, I'm doing good too. It's Stacey in Vancouver, Canada, on a wintry kind of day, but sunny. It's beautiful here. And yeah, I'm here because I'm a fan of Robert's.
We all are.
They're lined up at the podcast door. Yesterday we announced the winners of the 2022 Open Awards for Excellence. Where's the time gone? But we've tried doing the last 2 years is to bring on to the podcast the people who win the awards so we can learn more about their work and their interests. And so all the awards are really big, but we're really fortunate to have with us today maybe the most prestigious one, the individual award for lifetime achievement that has been this year to Robert Schuwer from the Netherlands. And so it might take me a lifetime to ask you all questions, Robert, about open education, but just let us know where you're sitting right now, maybe your current role and what lies ahead. And we'll talk about that thing behind you on the screen.
Well, I'm currently, I'm a small town in the Netherlands, Malden it's called. It's near the city of Nijmegen, and Nijmegen is at the eastern part of the Netherlands. We moved here almost 4 years ago, but I've been raised here, done my high school and my first university study, mathematics, I've done in Nijmegen. And the city always attracted me. So I moved from Nijmegen when I got my first job in another part of the Netherlands. But 4 years ago, we thought, I want to go back. And we managed to sell our old house and find a beautiful house here in Malden. And I'm very happy to be here. And living here, actually at the edge of a wood, we love walking in it. And what I'm doing currently, I'm finishing all kinds of tasks for my job. I had my last symposium 2 weeks ago, apparently. That was because, I'm retiring at the end of this year. I will be retiring, like Paul. I think we are the same age, Paul. And so I'm finishing up, but I definitely won't leave the field. We are at the end of a 4-year innovation program now in the Netherlands, where one of the topics was digital learning resources, but not only open resources, but digital resources. And I was in that project, part of this program, I was a project leader for these 4 years. And that's finishing now at the end of this year. So that's now taking me my time to finish it in a neat way.
Yeah. So now you have to pack up your office, right?
Well, actually, since Corona, my office is mostly being at home. Yeah, I'm not sitting now in my normal room, but I'm in the kitchen because it's more warm over there.
Oh, I know that. That's my usual workplace. I like the comfort of being in the kitchen. So you're back in a town where you spent some of your early education and you studied math and computer science and PhD in knowledge systems. But did anything trigger your interest in learning, being in school in the first years? What kind of student were you when you started out?
Well, actually, the interest of being a teacher, and that because that was my first interest, was already sparked at not kindergarten, K-12 education, because most of my teachers were wonderful teachers. And they inspired me. So I thought, I want to do that. And first, I wanted to be a teacher in kindergarten. And then when I got at middle school and high school, I thought, no, I loved mathematics, and I had my best teacher. It was my mathematics teacher. He was so inspiring. He was really a role model for me. So that inspired me to study mathematics, to become a teacher in mathematics. I started my career in 1980 as mathematics after I finished my study, but that was only for 4 years. And it was not because I didn't like it, but well, I don't know how it is in the States, but in the Netherlands, when you get a job on a school, then when you are the last who is getting the job, you are the first who has to move when there are not sufficient children in the school, because the number of children which start at school determines the number of teachers a school can afford. And at that time, each year, it was kind of tricky whether or not there would be sufficient children. And each year, the school director had to actually confirm that I would be a teacher for another year. Otherwise, I had to do the service in the army service. But then I thought, well, this is not a good base to start a career or to build up a career. And so therefore, I choose to widen my perspective and started a study on computer science. And and that was in my last year as a teacher. At the end of that year, I could start in a company with my 1 year of computer science education.
So what was state of the art, or what was the prospects for computers in education when you were making that switch from teaching to study?
Actually, no. In this company, I was in a kind of support information center, it was called, and we had to support non-educated people who are not educated in computer science, who would use a computer for their own business, like in building spreadsheet models or using small database applications for all kinds of reporting stuff. And we had to support those people. So the education part of it, I had to give courses to those people. We were a small team who were responsible for that, and but also did some system development and tested packages. So those applications packages. Actually, we didn't use at that time personal computers. But we used this system on the mainframe, where you could conversational monitoring system, and there you could more or less simulate what we currently would call a personal computer, but that was actually a part of the mainframe.
I took a class in high school. We used an IBM 1130.
Yeah, it was 3311, I think. It was the thing we had at that company. My practice in computer science, that helped me a lot in my study, because there you can relate to practical experiences. But I did nothing on educational. So I wasn't thinking about the role of computers in education. It was not part of that business. When I, after 3 years, left the company and started at the University of Technology in Eindhoven, I came then in the business science department, where it was actually at the edge of computer science and business science, information sciences. It was actually the application of computers in business, like business information systems, and how to develop them, and methods to develop them, and modeling of data, modeling of process, all those kinds of things. That was the topic of the course, of the program. And I had to give courses on those topics and did not use computers for it. It was sheetware, actually, we were using, and PowerPoints, but not applications like currently. I was still, at that time, still not thinking about what I'm doing now. Therefore, that was my previous life.
But it's all part of the path. And so along that journey of being in computer science and math, do you remember what it was that first made you aware or sparked an interest in open education, or just openness in general? Like
openness in general, actually, I heard about in 2001. In 2001, I was working at the Open University, but then at a spin-off, more or less a commercial spin-off of the Open University in the Netherlands, working with a small team. And there one of my colleagues said, well, actually, MIT has published all their courses free online. That means something. That will mean something. That means that content is no issue. Content is not about content anymore. It is about what you are doing with it. So he had this idea. And I said, okay, well, nice, fine. And I continued what I was doing and didn't pay any interest to it until 5 years later. And that was actually when Fred Malden, then the dean of the Open University, and he asked himself, what would being involved with open education resources mean for the Open University? Because it's already open, but then more classical way of opening program, place, time, and speed. And so those are the openness, what he calls the classical openness. And then the digital openness can be added. But what would it mean for the Open University? Would it change the business model? What advantages would it bring? What risk would it take? For instance, for what the Open University was doing. So he started a project, or he defined a project actually. He raised money for it from the Judith Foundation, was one of the partners who gave a grant for this program. Actually, we started 2 months later as an Open Learn initiative from the British Open University. So we had a lot of contact at the time. And then he asked me, do you want to be the project leader? so that's how I became into openness.
That there was an open university in the Netherlands. I'm curious, is there something about the culture and the shared beliefs in your country about the value of openness at a society level?
Well, of course, open source software was already, I cannot say that it is a mainstream movement, especially not at that time. But what I learned after we done our first project at the Open University, that the government became very interested in it. And so I think the Dutch government, I consider them one of the head runners at the forefront of open policies. I don't know if you can call what they have an open policy, but they were the first in 2008 to define a project and finance a project which was a nationwide initiative to be involved with openness, open educational resources. It was not only the platform WikiWise, but it was more the thinking about open education resources in all educational sectors from K to 12 to universities. And they financed it for 5 years. The minister at that time, the Minister of Education, he came with the name WikiWise, which was kind of a hinder because everyone thought about something like a Wikipedia. And then our first platform came out and they said, hey, it's not a Wikipedia. So they were bit disappointed. So it is the spirit of the Wikipedia. It's not the Wikipedia. So we had to invent that kind of marketing talk to people to get them other expectations for it. And the current government, which is a coalition of several parts working together, they have in their coalition agreement, open education, open science should be the default unless safety prevents it. So they have it and they are doing things to actually stimulate that in the Netherlands. So that's on government level. And that, of course, has its influence on how people are thinking about openness, at least in education. The Netherlands is always been a trade kind of country. We have some industry, especially ASML, which is a big world player in computer devices or computer machinery, but it is more the trade. The Dutch are very good in trading, and that's where the wealth came and is still coming from. So we have to be open. We have to share things. We have to be not speaking only Dutch, but also speaking other languages. People on the border of the Netherlands, most of them also speak rather good German because, well, that makes it easy to trade with Germans, which is a bigger country, of course, than the Netherlands.
I was going to ask about the WikiWise name. I just checked and it's got 400,000 lessons in there, so it's still very active, right?
After this program ended at the 2013, and then there are actually 2 organizations in the Netherlands which support education in ICT-related matters. So we have SURF, which is especially for higher education. We have Kennisnet, and Kennisnet is for primary and secondary education. And they have adopted the WikiWise platform, and they have devised it and developed it further and further. They got money for this every year, and they are doing a great job in not only evolving this platform and developing more, but also involving schools and teachers to use this platform. And that they are doing that they're doing a nice job there.
Paul, Marcel, you remember to cut in any time because otherwise Alan's going to dominate here and give Robert a chance to hold his breath.
Okay, I'll jump in quickly. Well, first of all, I'll tell you, Robert, when I got involved with open education over a decade ago, I was trying to get my hands on anything that I could find to get familiarized with open education in general. And your name kept popping up. So I've been reading your work and learning about it since then, like in 2010. So it's just a pleasure to have been seeing you evolve and grow and be participating in so many initiatives about open education. And having this extensive body of work, I wonder now that you're saying that you're retiring, which I hope that you will continue to be participating in the open movement. But I do wonder if there was a specific project or initiative that has been your favorite since then and why.
Well, actually, I have several. So I have not one favorite. WikiWise is actually a project. It was 5 years and I learned very much about these initiatives. And it has kind of shaped me as being an open practitioner, more actually than the Opener project, which was my first project, because it was a cooperation. It was a very complex project, but it was also cooperation over all the sectors where you really had to think innovative. Actually, the technical issues were the least difficult, but it were how to board members, how to interest students, how to interest teachers to be part of this, to adopt the sharing and reusing resources. That actually where what I learned a lot in those 5 years, and which I thought, well, that is more important than the technical stuff. So I'm not so in the technical development. Of course, I have to learn or I have to follow also those kinds of development, and I'm doing it, but it is not where my strength is. So my real interest is in what can we do to widen adoption of OER and overcome all those barriers, which are mostly cultural barriers and psychological barriers, and not so much technical barriers. That's something which I've been involved in since 2000, and the rest of my career. And actually the last 8 years, my professorate was on this topic. That's what's my interest. And what I learned a lot of, because you asked for my favorite, is the nursing project I've been involved in the Netherlands. I don't know if you know this initiative. It's actually in the Netherlands. The 17 Universities of Applied Sciences offering a bachelor in nursing are since 2017 collaborating in creating and sharing and reusing OERs. They had project grants for the first 3 years, but they are now still involved and still very active on this. And they are actually an example. In the Netherlands, there's a lot of reference to the nursing project for other projects to learn from it. A couple of weeks ago, the project leader and myself have published a report. We have studied all the documents which were available, all the data, to formulate lessons learned. What can we learn from this project? What have we done good and what could have been better? And it is only in Dutch, unfortunately, but we are currently also making a paper for it. And I think it will be next week. And otherwise, the beginning of next year, we will send it to a journal and hopefully it will accept it. And of course, there should be a lot of revisions. I hope we publish it next year.
I've been super impressed, Robert, over the years with not only the projects you're doing, but the mentoring you do. When I was most recently in Nantes, listening to many of the people that you've been collaborating with, they're young, up-and-coming people just getting into open education. And I wonder if you can say a few words about what that process has been like for you to be a mentor.
Oh, I loved it. Really. This last 4 years, this program, this innovation program, I had to do two things. I had to lead the project, but I also said to myself, after this project, it's finished. You are retiring. And then, of course, you can still do things, but you won't be on the forefront. So other people should take it over from there. And there are a lot of young and very enthusiastic people, and they were involved in my project. So I could step aside a little and ask other people to say, okay, do your thing. Present at the OEGlobal, for instance, in May. A lot of people who were there, it was their first time at OEGlobal. It was actually their first time on an international conference and then an international conference on openness. And they were presenting and they were bloody nervous. And when they were presenting, I was very nervous because I had coached them and I said, okay, this is a friendly community, this is an open community, and they will not be harsh to you. And the least thing they can say is interesting, like English say, but it's still very, very friendly. And so don't be afraid. And so I was very proud of this community being there and doing their thing and presenting. And some of them I had mentored for this occasion. And I can step down. I can really step down. In my last symposium 1.5 weeks ago, I mentioned that because the first OEGlobal I was in 2007. I think none of you were there at that time. There were 40 people in my memory, and most of them from the States. And I was the only Dutchman there. So I asked Willem, but he said, no, we were not at that. We were the year after that. Then Willem came aboard. Now, I think we were the biggest in Nantes. The Dutch delegation was the largest one. That was only a tip of the iceberg because in the Netherlands, there are so many people involved now in open education resources and open education. And it is taken over. They can go ahead.
Good for you. You should be proud. Well done.
Well, it's not only my job, but I do see that I've added a bit to it, and that's where I'm proud of. So I feel grateful, but also, well, satisfied about my career, actually.
And in the vein of mentorship, and also you mentioned previously the influence of Fred Mulder, can you tell us about the startup of the GoGN, the Global OER Graduate Network? That's incredibly successful.
Yeah, actually it is. And that's Fred's idea. That's not my idea. I helped him and it did not from the very start, but it was Fred who, when he stepped down as dean in 2010, he had 4 or 5 years before he could retire. And then, well, what shall I do? So the OUNL said, okay, I can be a professor because he was a professor always. And he got the UNESCO chair. It was together with Rory. They were the first 2 UNESCO chairs on OER. And then he was thinking, okay, what shall we do on the UNESCO chair? And Rory said, well, I do this knowledge cloud, OER knowledge cloud. That was his thing. And Fred realized, well, there's done a lot of research on OER or OER-related topics, but most of them are very isolated. So they work in an institution, they do the research, but they are the only one being involved with OER. And they can talk maybe with the mentor, but there's not a network where they can talking like we are doing now. And so he thought, well, maybe we should create a network for this occasion. And I think it was Cable Green who came up with the GoGN name, because Fred had another name. And in one of the conferences, he was talking about this. And Cable said, why don't you call it GoGN? So I think Cable is the inventor of the name. And the idea was not to only involve the students, PhD students, but also their mentors to be part of this network. They got funded, and I think they are still being funded by the Hewlett Foundation. And with this funding, they could organize once or twice a year this conference. And in most cases, it is connected to the OEGlobal, or in the past also the Open Ed conference. 2 days before the conference, we started this network, or part of this network came together. They were funded because we could not fund everyone to be there. And that was actually the start of GoGN. And when Fred retired, it was handed over to the OUK, to the team of Martin Weller. And they have really extended it. And well, there were alumni, they involved the alumni, they have all kinds, they've really widened it and extensified it.
And it's an incredibly highly functional network of educators that just keeps getting better and better. So definitely proud to see that happen. What's on like your current front of your brain interest? Like what are the topics that are capturing your curiosity right now?
Sustainability. And the sustainability of OER initiatives. What puzzles me is when I started visited conferences in 2006 and so on. I think it was until the time of the MOOC, so until 2011 to 2012, that in every conference, sustainability in business models or whatever was a big part of the program. There were a lot of presentations, and then it suddenly no presentation at all about this topic. And it is not solved. And many projects struggle when the funding ends to continue the efforts. That's too bad, because in these 2 years, in most cases, they have created a wonderful collection of OERs, but it is not maintained then. And then after 2 years after the project ends, well, this collection more or less becomes worthless because it is not maintained, it is not updated, and then that's too bad. So I want to do my work on that topic. So together with Ben Jansen, of course, because especially the last 8 years, I've done a lot together with Ben Jansen. And after my move here to Malden, Ben lives in Nijmegen. So in 20 minutes riding by the bike, I'm at Ben's place. And we can get along very, very good together. Actually, we're close friends. And so Ben is already, he's 71 now. So he's already retired for a couple of years. But we want to do those kind of, research actually. We want to dig deeper into sustainability and hope to come up with some lessons and experiences.
Oh, there's some great synergy going to happen there. Yeah. Fueled by bicycles. I like that idea. I was looking at your blog and you have a recent post on OER and where do we go from here? Yeah. Rather sweeping, like, again, like what do you see as this next horizon for OER?
Well, I think in 2030, and I do it for the Dutch situation because that's the situation I know the best. And there's now in January, they're starting a new program, national program for 8 years, in which digital learning resources and among them open education resources are part of the program. And the goal of this program is that in 2030, it should be all levels of education, at all levels in higher education. Every teacher should be aware of OER, should have the skills and the knowledge to work with OERs and to mix those OERs with commercial learning materials to create what we have called the optimal mixture of learning materials. Because it is not only open. There are a lot of good commercial materials also in the field, but it is a combination of both which should support students and teachers the best in reaching their goals. And for this, it is also necessary to come up with good agreements with publishers and tech companies on the conditions their platforms can be used, and where it is not, and where still the institutions are in the lead and not platforms. So that's one things we have managed to accomplish the last couple of years, that all board members of higher education institutions have signed an agreement that they would collaborate on this to come up with this set of agreements with publishers. And that should form a basis to ultimately come to this optimal mix. And they've also agreed to really make open education resources big in the Netherlands. So that it could be a worthwhile alternative, for instance, in case when you cannot come to agreements with publishers. That's for the next coming 8 years. Those are two important milestones to come to the situation that working with OER should be as normal as working with classical textbooks was 10 or 20 years ago for each teacher and for each student also. That's what's going on here in the Netherlands. And that is what I also trust that will be the case in 2030. And that was also how I ended my blog, because when I started in 2009, 2010, Fred Malden said, to get OER mainstream, it will take 20 years. Well, 10 years have been passed since then. So 2030, then it is 20 years later. I think all the conditions are now. There's a UNESCO OER recommendation, which our government has signed. There's a UNESCO Open Science recommendation. The Netherlands has signed it. We have a disagreement with all the board members on higher education. We have this program, which is huge, with a lot of money from the government, where this OER is part of this program. And there is a lot of very enthusiastic people who want to go further with it. So the lights are on green. It is now or never. And I'm convinced it is now. And people really will take the responsibility and work on this. And of course, there will be drawbacks. Certainly there will be barriers. But I'm convinced that in 2030, this goal, this picture I have in my mind will be a reality then in the Netherlands.
So that's quite a commendable national commitment to support this, to have that kind of long-range vision, plans, and projects. We started our pre-recording talk about sources of energy with your image of the black hole in your screen. But we're talking about a source of energy for open education happening there in the Netherlands.
Yeah, it is, really.
Black holes, maybe the negative connotation, but we talked about some of the positive ones that come out of that.
There is actually a lot of energy, and there is a lot of really on all levels. It is not only the teachers or the institutions, but it is also the national level, the government, the collaboration of all these universities and University of Applied Science and vocational education. At the same time, also an 8-year program will start on open education for primary and secondary education to widen adoption also in those sectors. That's a program apart from the program for higher education, but there's also a lot of money going there as grant from the government. They are investing in it. So they really want to make this happen.
Paul, Marcela, I have to say, it's pretty obvious why Robert was recognized for lifetime achievement, and he's not even done yet. We know that.
No, not at all.
Did you get your 3D award?
Hey, did you send it already or?
No, not yet.
Oh, did I spill the beans? It's supposed to be a surprise.
Every morning I go to my mailbox, but still.
It will be there soon.
There's a nice surprise coming. I'm terrible. I can't keep a secret from anybody.
The same with me, Ellen. It's hard for me also to keep secret.
For me, Robert, it's been a joy to have the conversation. We've exchanged emails, but your enthusiasm and motivation, I can see why it's inspirational to people that you mentor. So congratulations again. Paul, Marcela, you want to put anything in the mix here?
Well, I will just say, I think Robert's been an inspiration for me too. And so it's not just the people that he's mentored directly in the Netherlands. And I like the way that he speaks with such passion about this work. And I think that it requires that kind of passion to make it possible to achieve that 2030 vision. And I feel like Robert's passed on that passion to so many other people that I feel he's right. It's going to happen. Thank you, Robert.
Oh, you're welcome. Well, actually, I was so surprised when I heard that you gave this Lifetime Achievement Award because, well, I know I had this impact in the Netherlands, but I didn't realize that my impact was more than only in the Netherlands. I didn't realize it really. So thank you for this recognition.
Chime in on that. Congratulations. Yeah, the same. Well, now you know that everybody's reading your work outside of the Netherlands. So it's wonderful. And we will keep an eye on you because we know that you're going to stay active. And thank you for all your contributions to the open education movement. It's
my pleasure. Thank you.
I have another question because I came across your interest in classical music and
my website.
Yes. I read websites, but can you talk about this connection you have with your brothers over music? It was just a beautiful thing.
Well, it started in 2018. The cause of it was not so good. It was when the Swedish DJ, when he died, I don't know his name. I have to look it up. I've forgotten it.
It's not with a G, wasn't it?
Avicii. Yeah, Avicii. He died in 2018, and I have an app group with my three brothers. And well, we talked about this, and then it came out that my youngest brother still followed this current music, and he proposed numbers. Well, you should listen to this, and you should listen to this, and he did it every Friday. And because the rest of us, we were stuck in the 70s and 80s, and but he had moved on. Then I thought, well, I can do the same, but then for classical music. So I started posting in this app group every week a proposal about some classical music, and I told about something about the work. And then after 1 year or so, I thought, well, I can also put it on the website and more people can maybe enjoy it. So I did, and I have done this for 4 years, but I have now stopped in September to do it on a weekly basis. And since then I have not posted, but I think after retirement, I will not pick it up on a weekly basis, but I will continue to now and then post some new things works I came along to post it for other people to enjoy. But there's always been a passion for me, classical music, so to play it, but also to listen to it. And my brothers really weren't so knowledgeable about this, and they really wanted to know more about this. Actually, two of my brothers. The third brother, he tried. We said, no, it's not my kind of music. Sorry, Robert. I admire what you're doing, but it's not going to happen that I'm going to like this.
Well, there's a metaphor for teaching, right? You do everything you can. Your brother tried, right?
Yeah, he tried, but he said, no, it's not my thing. So, okay.
Well, thank you so much, Paul, Marcela, and of course, Robert, for being here. And thank you for people listening to this episode of OEG Voices. And again, it's a podcast we're producing at Open Education Global. Every episode, I like to mix in a different bit of open licensed music. And in honor of Robert's musical, I found a bit of a Beethoven recording by an artist named Circus Marcus from the Free Music Archive. And it's licensed under an attribution non-commercial license. We encourage you to think about using the Free Music Archive for your projects. And you'll find this episode at our website, voices.oeglobal.org. We hope you kind of engage in some more follow-up conversations, questions with Robert in our OEG Connect community.